somewhere between the noise of the world and the silence of your soul lies a question you've long forgotten to ask. What am I really running from? You see, life doesn't shout its wisdom, it whispers it, through the pain you avoid, the stillness you fear, and the patterns you repeat without thought. Every frustration, every detour, every echo of emptiness is not punishment, but instruction, a sacred syllable in the great language of the universe. You were never meant to conquer life like a battlefield. You were meant to harmonize with it, like a note in a divine melody. And perhaps the problems that haunt you aren't problems at all, but unopened letters from the cosmos, gifts wrapped in discomfort, waiting for your attention. To hack the mind is not to override it, but to remember the music it's forgotten to play. For in the architecture of your struggle, there is already the blueprint of your becoming. Most people spend their entire lives trying to outrun pain, as if it were some great mistake in the design of existence. We sedate it with distractions, drown it in noise, numb it with the endless chase for comfort, pleasure, or success. But what if I told you that pain is not a flaw in the system? It is the system whispering to you, trying to get your attention. We have been conditioned to treat discomfort as the enemy, to cover it up like an inconvenient crack in the wall of our carefully curated lives. But pain is not chaos. It's a signal, a message, a quiet knock from the deeper layers of reality, reminding you that something within is misaligned with the truth of who you are. You see, pain doesn't come to punish you. It arrives to guide you. If only you'd stop running long enough to listen. When a child cries, we don't blame the child, we ask what it needs. But when our soul cries out, through anxiety, through heartbreak, through quiet despair, we call it weakness. We silence it. We bury it under productivity and shallow smiles. And in doing so, we miss the sacred conversation life is trying to have with us. The truth is, the things that hurt you most are often the very things trying to wake you up. That betrayal. It shattered your illusion, yes, but it also revealed where your worth was too tightly bound to someone else's acceptance. That failure. It wasn't your downfall. It was the universe course, correcting you, steering you away from a path that could never sustain your spirit. Pain has a way of burning away the false, so the real can emerge. But this only happens when you stop resisting it. When you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is this here to teach me?" Because once you open yourself to that question, everything changes. The suffering doesn't disappear, but it transforms. It becomes purposeful. It becomes sacred. Like a fire that doesn't destroy, but refines. Now, this doesn't mean you have to romanticize suffering or seek it out. Life provides plenty of it on its own. But it does mean you are invited to meet it with curiosity rather than judgment. To sit in its presence not as a victim, but as a student. Because within every ache, there is a lesson about boundaries, about self-love, about impermanence, about letting go. And if you pay attention, truly pay attention, you'll find that the very wound you cursed last year became the reason you grew wings this year. We all want healing, but we forget that healing often begins in the very place we're most afraid to look. The cracked edges, the silent nights, the breaking moments. These are not the signs that something is wrong with you. They are evidence that you are alive, evolving, being reshaped into something truer, something stronger, something more aligned with your essence. You don't have to fight pain. You don't have to fear it. You only have to listen to what it's trying to tell you, because it never comes uninvited. It comes when your inner world has outgrown its container, when the soul needs space to breathe again. And once you understand that, You'll no longer see life as a series of problems to solve, but as a series of invitations to awaken. Pain is not the end of the path. It is the doorway. We live in a world obsessed with movement, forward, upward, faster. Always reaching, always chasing, always filling the silence with more. It's as if we believe the more we do, the more we become. But beneath all the noise, there is a quiet space within you that remembers a different rhythm. One that doesn't race, but watches. One that doesn't push, but listens. Stillness, true stillness, isn't about doing nothing. It's about becoming present to everything. It's the space between your thoughts, the breath between your words, the pause between each heartbeat. And it's in that space that the real answers lie. The ones you've been too busy to hear. So many of the problems we face are not born out of what is happening to us, but out of our refusal to sit with what is already within us. We think solutions lie in action, in momentum, in fixing and forcing. But the most profound shifts often come not when we do more, but when we finally stop. And when you do stop, when you allow silence to stretch out its hand, you meet a part of yourself that has been waiting all along, the part that isn't defined by achievement or identity or fear, the part that simply is. That watches the world without clinging to it. That observes your thoughts without becoming them. That feels your emotions without being consumed by them. Of course, stillness can be uncomfortable. In fact, that's often why we avoid it. Because when the world grows quiet, we begin to hear the deeper stirrings we've long suppressed, the grief that never fully healed, the truth we've been avoiding, the dreams we've ignored. But this discomfort isn't a punishment. It's a cleansing, a return to what is real. Silence holds a mirror, and in that mirror, we are no longer the roles we play. We are not our regrets. We are not our worries. We are the awareness behind them. And the more we allow ourselves to sit in that awareness, the more life begins to reorganize itself around clarity instead of confusion. Have you ever noticed how the most meaningful realizations don't come when you're trying to figure things out? They arrive when you're walking in nature, lying awake in the quiet of the night, or staring out a window with no intention at all. That's because truth doesn't compete with noise. It waits for stillness. And when it finds it, it flows in like water to a dry well. We've been told that stillness is laziness, that silence is empty. But the deepest truths are born there. And the mind, which is often frantic and reactive, begins to soften. It learns to rest in something deeper than thought, in something that doesn't need explanation to feel true. You don't need to retreat to the mountains to find this. You don't need to escape your life. Stillness is available in every moment, between breaths, between decisions, between all the trying. And if you can learn to sit in that stillness, even for a few minutes a day, you begin to live from a different center, a place that doesn't react but responds, that doesn't grasp but allows, that doesn't fear the unknown but opens to it. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, life begins to change. Not because you forced it to, but because you finally got out of the way. In the stillness you fear, the self you've forgotten is waiting to be remembered. There's a strange kind of hypnosis that takes over most of us, one so subtle we rarely notice it. We go through life listening to a voice in our heads, assuming it is us. It comments on everything, judges, plans, remembers, worries. It narrates our entire existence, and we believe it. But what if I told you you're not that voice? You're the one who hears it. Most of our suffering doesn't stem from what's happening in the world. It stems from our identification with the endless stream of thoughts that color every experience. The mind is like a storyteller that never rests, spinning tales of who you are, what you lack, what could go wrong. And because we've never been taught to question that voice, we mistake its fear for wisdom, its doubt for truth, its criticism for reality. But have you ever paused long enough to observe it? Not get lost in the story, but just watch it like clouds moving through the sky. You'll begin to see something remarkable. Thoughts arise and fall, but there's a still presence beneath them. That presence is you. Not the noise, not the stories, but the quiet watcher behind it all. The mind can be a beautiful servant, but it is a terrible master. Left unchecked, it creates imaginary problems and drags us through past regrets and future anxieties. It becomes a hall of mirrors, reflecting distorted versions of self, of others, of life itself. And in that distortion, we forget our essence. We start to believe we are broken, lost, unworthy, not because it's true, but because the mind keeps repeating it. But the miracle is this: the moment you recognize that you are not your thoughts, a space opens up. A freedom. You're no longer trapped inside the drama. You can witness the fear without being consumed by it. You can hear the criticism without accepting it. That space is the beginning of wisdom. You see, the mind was never meant to define you. It was meant to serve your awareness, your presence, your being. And awareness doesn't need to explain itself. It doesn't need to argue or control. It simply sees, it allows, it accepts. When you stop identifying with every thought that passes through, something extraordinary happens. Life slows down. The pressure eases. Clarity emerges. You begin to act, not from compulsion, but from alignment. You speak with intention rather than reaction. And in that state, you realize how many of your so-called problems were only projections, phantoms of a mind left unchecked. This isn't about fighting your thoughts. It's about seeing them clearly, like watching a play from the audience rather than being trapped on stage. The characters will still perform, the emotions will still arise, but you are not caught in the script. You are the awareness the play unfolds within, and that awareness is vast. It is silent, yet powerful. It connects you to something deeper than identity, something beyond your name, your history, your ideas. It is the same presence that exists in the stillness of a forest, in the hush before a sunrise, in the breath between words. And it has always been with you. You don't need to silence the mind to be free from it. You only need to remember that you are not its prisoner. You are the sky, not the storm. You are the awareness behind the thought, not the thought itself. And in that realization, a new kind of life begins, one that flows not from fear, but from truth. Freedom isn't found in changing your thoughts. It's found in realizing they were never you to begin with. Life often feels like a puzzle we're fumbling through blindfolded. We move forward, we fall, we rise again, each step filled with uncertainty, each detour disguised as failure. And yet, when you step back, far enough to see it all without the judgment, you'll notice something beautiful. Nothing was ever wasted. Every loss, every delay, every shattered dream was not an interruption in your journey. It was the journey. There's a quiet intelligence to life that most of us overlook because it doesn't always speak in the language we expect. It doesn't shout through grand revelations. It whispers through setbacks, closed doors, and broken plans. We often think something's gone wrong when things fall apart. But perhaps what's falling apart is not your life. It's the illusion of control, the false certainty, the path you outgrew. You see, the universe doesn't operate by accident. It doesn't scatter your experiences randomly like dice on a table. It's precise. unfolding moment by moment like an intricate piece of music, where even the silence is intentional. What looks like delay may be divine preparation. What feels like rejection might be redirection toward something your soul needed more than your ego could imagine. Think of the people you've lost, the seasons that ended too soon, the dreams that didn't quite come alive. You mourned them, you questioned them, and yet, if you look closely, each of those experiences carved something essential into you. A little more depth, a little more humility, a little more clarity, and perhaps even the ability to hold someone else's sorrow with more tenderness. Because now you understand. We don't like the idea that we're being shaped by forces beyond our understanding. We want control. We want guarantees. But life is more of a sculpture than a blueprint. It chips away what doesn't belong, revealing what was always waiting underneath. Sometimes we don't get what we want, not because we're unworthy, but because life is trying to give us what we need. And if you can begin to trust that, even just a little, the heaviness lifts. Imagine for a moment that nothing you've lived through has been random, that every disappointment was sacred, that each misstep was part of a choreography only your soul could comprehend. Suddenly, you're not a victim of chaos. You're a participant in a cosmic unfolding. You're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be to receive what's next. But here's the secret most people miss. This isn't about believing in fate or destiny or some rigid plan. It's about learning to see, really see, how the seemingly disconnected moments of your life are intimately woven together. That the confusion, the waiting, the silence are not empty. They are full. Full of unseen alignment. Full of transformation in progress. And maybe the reason most people feel lost is because they haven't yet slowed down enough to witness this quiet genius at work. They're still trying to fix everything, not realizing that some things were never broken. They were just becoming. So take a breath. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are being readied, softened, deepened. Even when you don't understand it, even when it hurts, something meaningful is taking shape, something only life could sculpt through the raw material of your experience. And one day, you'll look back and realize the moments you cursed, the seasons you couldn't wait to escape, the things you thought were holding you back, they were the very ground where your soul was learning to stand tall. Every twist in your path was not an error. It was a hidden instruction in the sacred art of becoming.